Good morning. How are you doing? Have you had a good weekend? Are you well? Monday it is, and well, it's pretty dark and grey and miserable out there in Salford. We've been promised 100 days of bad weather, haven't we? According to some of Sunday's newspapers, we've been told that we can expect 3 months of horrendously bad weather. Well, we'll have to wait and see. But it's pretty grim out there. It's pretty grim. I've damp-proofed. Leaks! There aren't many leaks now. A conservatory leak has been fixed. And a bit of lead flashing that had come away from chimney has been reattached. So there's no little drip into the attic. It's all good. We're battening down the hatches. Not just for this winter, but for the next 10 years. Because we're all going to die, as we know. We'll talk more about that in a minute, about how we're all going to die. I won't bore the piss out of you with it, because I've had a lot to say on it. And I opened my inbox, my emails this morning, to see a lot of criticism for my characterisation of the Extinction Rebellion Sky News guests yesterday. What were their names again? Savannah Lovelock. Yeah. It did come across as maybe a tad misogynistic, some of the language I used. I think I said cow at one stage. I think I used the word bitch another time. Not nice, I would agree, and I don't tend towards misogyny. But when people are telling you, if you need to get to a hospital really quickly, we might engage in a discussion with you. You're a bitch, love. If I want to go to a hospital, I'll go. And you and your scruffy tweed wearing, ganj smoking friends will piss off out of the way. Anyway, we're not going to rant today. It's all calm. It's all calm in Richie Allen Show Towers. Very good morning, Matt. Massachusetts to Lux Mia. Who knows, 33 to... I'm not going to read out the comments because I've not got time. I've got a lot to do this morning. I've got a really good show later lined up, but I've got a lot of research to do ahead of it. Hi to Charlie Girl. How you doing, Charlie? To Martin Ellen. To Dan. Letra Blaze. Lawrence King. David Bramble. LUFC Leeds United. I don't know why I allow you on this live chat, to be honest. Dirty Leeds. Hi to Liz McFall. Hi to Angela. How you doing, Angela? Sean Mack. Evading Grid. Dean Thornley. Nigel Perrott. Let's go on. John Jones. How you doing, John? Bruce Blunt. Rasputin's Ghost. Stuart Batty. Sandy J. Alex Fulton. My great friend Phil Restino in Florida might be watching this. He's up early, is Phil. I know Jennifer wings in from Florida. 5 hours behind us, you see, so it's early. Hi to Dave Twig. How you doing, Dave? Dave, you'll have to wait and see, is the answer. No, I'll tell you about this evening's show before I finish today. Hi to Marcus Siostrom. Is that how I pronounce that, Marcus? Siostrom. Marcus Siostrom, how you doing? Where are you watching from, Marcus? Mr. P. Gammon, Yupkek, Ella Smith, Every Designs, India Kane. I've got to stop, guys, because this is boring for those who listen on podcast later on. So I've got to just get into the papers now. Joyce Burns. How you doing, Joyce? It might come across as hilarious, Joyce, but others don't find it so funny. Including one or two of my female friends. They don't find it funny at all. But look. Good morning, Jean-Ann. How you doing, kid? Weather wasn't anywhere near as bad on the west of Ireland as had been promised by the national media in Ireland. Right. Yeah. So obviously the newspapers today focus quite heavily on the beginning of another 2 weeks of protest by what have been called, it's very interesting, they talk about an Extinction Rebellion, and they have a number of different ways of describing them. They describe them as a pressure group, an environmental pressure group. They describe them as a climate change protest group. There are any number of ways they describe them. But the media seems to be very reluctant to describe them in any way that could be considered as critical of what it is they're doing at the moment and the things that they plan to do in the next couple of weeks and the disruption. So the media, of course, is all part of this big game. It's not a game. Of course, if these people eventually get what they want, it certainly won't be a game. There won't be anything funny in it at all. But before focusing just briefly on this issue. And in a newspaper review show today, it's difficult to avoid it because, like I said, a lot of the papers are covering it inside anyway, if not outside. There's Ginger Baker. If you're a Cream fan, you'll know that Ginger Baker passed away over the weekend. What a character he must have been. Ginger Baker, the legendary drummer. Great documentary about him a couple of years ago when a film crew went to see him in South Africa. Crazy guy, eccentric, mad, but very talented. Ginger Baker died. Aged 80, probably a lot of people I wouldn't imagine too many people would have imagined he'd have seen 80, but anyway, he had a good innings. Johnson in last-ditch bid to save Brexit plan is the headline on the Brexit even obsessed Times. Apparently, he's going to be spending quite a bit of time today and tomorrow speaking to the Irish Taoiseach. The Taoiseach, which is the Prime Minister, Leo Varadkar. He's apparently going to be spending time speaking with Emmanuel Macron, the French President, to win support for the deal that he has proposed. All right? I'm going to spare you. I'm not going to get into it in any great detail. I'm going to spare you today. The Telegraph. Better put my glasses on. Boris to seek Supreme Court ruling on no deal. So the Telegraph alleges that Johnson, in the event the European Union says, no thanks, we don't like your plan, Johnson says we immediately default to no deal, doesn't he? That's what he says. If they don't accept it, therefore I can't bring it back to Parliament. So if they don't accept it, I can't ask Parliament to vote on what they haven't accepted. Therefore, we default to no deal, says Johnson. However, MPs seemingly took that out of his hands by voting through the Benn Act, which compels him, in the event he doesn't reach a deal with the EU, to go back to them in the form of a letter to ask them to extend. He says that won't happen, and the Telegraph says today that he might go back to Lady Hale of the spider brooch. Gorgeous big spider brooch. What an intricate web we do weave. Yeah. He might take it back to the Supreme Court then. Why would he do that? Well, the Telegraph alleges that you don't get to go before the Supreme Court in a few days. It might take a few weeks for that hearing to be set up and to be heard. And in the meantime, we would crash out. Don't you hate people who do that? Crash out, right? Anyway, so that's what they are alleging Boris Johnson is thinking of doing. Yeah. Is he, Richie? Having the Scooby-Doo? But we're not going anywhere, regardless of what he does, right? Oh, by the way, that picture of the white horse there in Alton Barnes was sent to me by Anne Lation. Anne's a listener. Good morning, Anne. I'm not sure if you're watching on your tablet. I think you were in transit when you sent me that picture. But that's Extinction Rebellion protesters who've used a bit of chalk to draw or paint their logo on the white horse Alton Barnes. So presumably it'll wash off in the rain, presumably. Let's hope so. Okay, thanks for sending that to me, Anne. Appreciate that. Yeah, scruffy bastards, eh? I bet you they smell, all of them. They smell. Of course they do. What's in the eye paper? French and Irish unite to frustrate Johnson. Hence, he might be ringing Varadkar, as if Varadkar makes any decisions. And he might be ringing Macron to say, come on, let's get this over the line. That's the focus of the eye paper today. And David Attenborough, national institution, is he? Is he Attenborough? I remember growing up in Ireland, we always had, when I was a youngster, we had HTV Wales, which was the Welsh ITV, basically. HTV Wales we had. We had BBC One Wales and BBC Two Wales. So in Ireland, we always got the Living Planet, for example. And we loved those programmes growing up. We all did, didn't we? The Living Planet, whatever you think of Attenborough. Lovely programmes, beautifully photographed programmes in the far reaches of the earth, observing species, beautiful pictures. We got the books as well when we were kids, the accompanying books. So, yeah. Attenborough. He endorses Extinction Rebellion, does he? Attenborough, I presume he does. Here's the Express then. PM warns Macron, don't think we won't quit. Okay. Yes, my football team were beaten yesterday away to Newcastle. And the other mob across the town, they were beaten as well. But Salford won! We beat Walsall 3-0. Get in! Graham Alexander's boys. Marvellous. Yep, that's all that matters. That Salford won. And, need you be reminded, Wigan were defeated 28-4 by Salford in Rugby League on Friday. And grand final is on Saturday. And I shall be there. Squat a nerve is the headline on the front page of the Metro. This is alluding to claims made over the weekend that Boris Johnson would stay put in number 10 even if he lost a vote of no confidence. This is just pure theatre. It's just bullshit, this. Okay? The Mirror. Vinnie Jones in the Mirror, he was in the papers yesterday talking about his wife who passed away from cancer and bereavement and dealing with bereavement. Vinnie Jones, the footballer and actor. Boris Johnson's Brexit bombshell, no deal could kill. This is not new. Every few weeks we hear a story about how medicine shortages in the event of a no deal Brexit will result in people, well, expiring. It's bullshit, right? It is, but it doesn't matter. It's good bullshit. It's good bullshit. It's easy to spread around. Front page of the Mail. The Mail is serialising Elton John's autobiography, and I don't have any time at all for Elton John, apart from the fact that some of his songs, some of his 70s tunes are good tunes. The guy could write a damned good tune, let's be honest about it. But I don't like divas. I've never had any time for divas. John, at one time, arrived in Japan, didn't he? To do a concert that was sold out and threw a diva fit at the airport because many of his fans had turned up, as the Japanese do. They're very enthusiastic Japanese fans for sports teams and for musicians. They do go a bit over the top, you know. And they rocked up to the airport in droves, and this arsehole threw a hissy fit and got on the plane and went home and didn't do the gig. No time for him at all. But the memoirs look like they might be somewhat interesting. They're not typically, you know, self-aggrandizing like many memoirs are. You know, and then I met the Queen, and then I met Nelson Mandela, and then I did this for the poor, and then I did some work for charity. Boring old memoirs. Apparently he's very self-critical in this particular book. Some of the things he's done and his behaviour. So maybe it's worth a read. I don't know. I'll wait for 12 months till it's in one of charity shops over road for a couple of quid. Then I'll buy it. That's how to do it. Judge blasts Nick police whitewash. Right. No, I won't. I won't get into it because I'll be here all day. There is an establishment cover-up around VIP paedophile rings. Carl Beach has been sent to prison for 12, 14, whatever, 15 years for allegedly inventing stories about politicians dead and not dead, currently living. And there's a demand that the police be censored, be censured, be hosed out, that wholesale change is made to how the police investigate this stuff. But the police have come out and said, our lads did their job and they did it to the letter of the law. And the establishment is not happy. We have to cover this on the show, I know that, and we will. Just getting the right people to come on to talk about it. It's in the Daily Mail today. Okay. You do remember me 3-4 years ago? You remember particularly about Paul Gambaccini, particularly about Michael Lavelle, the Corrie actress, Coronation Street actor Michael Lavelle, who plays Kevin the mechanic in Corrie. And I speculated at the time. I wasn't the only one. I'm not trying to say that I had some epiphany here, but it did occur to me that they would incorrectly accuse people of being part of paedophile rings as a tactic to muddy the waters and to ultimately trash the notion that VIP paedophile rings have been and do operate in this country. And that's how I see it. Harvey Proctor can scream bloody murder all he wants. And I understand anybody who's innocent of anything, their outrage at going through, the media scrutiny and the accusations. It's a terrible thing. Cliff Richard, other people. But ultimately they're being used, I believe. The Guardian, thousands unknowingly on secret Prevent database is the headline. Prevent is a counter-terrorism strategy. You've heard a lot about it. You've read a lot about it in the news. And it's come in for an awful lot of criticism because, of its alleged targeting of certain groups of people at the expense of maybe missing out on the signs in other groups of people that they have been radicalised or whatever. It's been heavily criticised, this Prevent strategy, this government and police strategy. Well, the Guardian alleges today that Prevent has gone on in secret, this whole idea, and that thousands of people's names and their metadata, their internet footprint basically, is being accessed without their knowledge regularly by counter-terrorism people and people working for Prevent. And the Guardian is saying, well, that's a violation of your human rights. You should know this if people are storing data on you and revising it and what have you. So, yeah, maybe something in that for us as well. The Sun has got a story about Gary Glitter, the paedophile. The film Joker with Joaquin Phoenix apparently contains one of Glitter's songs. And there's outrage, apparently. Well, there always is. Outrage. I'm guessing it's Rock and Roll Part 2. That's what I'm guessing. I don't know. I haven't seen Joker. Rock and Roll Part 2, maybe. And snowflakes are out in droves. We have this with Michael Jackson as well. Now, Michael Jackson was never convicted of anything. But he is suspected, Michael Jackson, of indecently touching children. Suspected of it. And there are calls regularly for Michael to be de-playlisted. Every commercial radio station, they must playlist their presenters. Bet you didn't know that. Some of you will know it, some of you won't. Radio presenters do not get to choose the songs they play. They're given a playlist by their head of music and they must stick to it rigorously. And there have been calls for Jackson to be basically just written out of history. Gary Glitter might be a filthy rotten paedophile. I'm sure he is. But there's a very interesting intellectual argument or discussion to be had without all the inflammatory rhetoric, without screaming and bawling and virtue signaling and leave it to one side. Yes, we know raping children is heinous. It's the worst thing in the world ever. Doesn't get any worse than that. We know this. But can we just calm down and have a chat about songs recorded in the 1970s and whether we should not just write them out of history? Let's have a chat about that. You might think they should be written out of history, and I'm happy to hear that. What do I think? I'm indifferent. I don't know. I was in a car 2 years ago. I was being driven by somebody in London, and Rock and Roll Part 2 was on the radio. And I found myself going, do-do-do-do, aye, do-do-do. Do I have any sympathy with paedophiles? Obviously fucking not. Right? It's a good tune, though. Yeah, he's filthy, Gary Glitter. Jesus Christ, doesn't get any worse, really. Yeah. The Star. Family demand Kyle death files. Jeremy Kyle, no point in getting into this. There used to be a show called The Jeremy Kyle Show, and it was a bit like Jerry Springer, wasn't it? People, often unsophisticated people. Gina. I'm not saying Jean Ann is unsophisticated. We've talked about this privately. Unsophisticated doesn't mean unintelligent. Far from it. Unsophisticated. People with problems go on television and expose their private lives to a baying audience. And a number of people who were on the show became very ill afterwards, psychologically unwell, and there was a suicide or two. And it's rumbling on. Jeremy Kyle. Alrighty. Quick A number of people think Michael Jackson was set up. But how do you know? You see, you have to understand, Michael Jackson, as far as I understand, and I've read the books, I read the books growing up. I read his own book, which was bizarre. The one he wrote, Moonwalker, which was a bizarre memoir. But there were some clues in there. He was exposed as a very young boy to his brothers because he's tight-fisted father and because of the tight-fisted executives at Motown. They stuck them all in a room together on the road. And he was 10, 11, 12. And the brothers were older, 17, 18, and they were bringing girls in. And they were having sex with the girls in front of Michael. And some of the girls were touching Michael. I'm not making any excuses for anything Michael Jackson did or didn't do, because I don't know what he did or didn't do. I am not making excuses. But I'm saying this is not an ordinary man. You know, mitigating circumstances, maybe. Not that you ever excuse it. If he had been found guilty, you throw him in jail, and that's the end of it. But what young boy can grow up healthy being exposed to what he was being exposed to? And if his brothers weren't bringing girls back to hotel rooms that were fondling him, his father was beating the shit out of him. And I know that pain. So let's give Michael, if not a pass at all, if he did anything, his story is different. Hi to MK. How you doing, MK? Asks me, am I on the list? What list is that? I'm not sure what list. I'm not reading this, by the way. I'm not following it. Hi to UFO Daily. Hi to Kundalini, who says Elton John is married to Diana. Yeah. Salford Rugby League, yeah. Baba Yaga, hi there. Eat Greta and save the world. Lovely. Hi to Persona non grata. Just a few more of those there. Yeah, Michael Jackson's story is a sad one, yeah. There's no doubt about it. Right, let's have a look at the extinction mob. It's coming up for 5 to 10. We're not doing too bad this morning. Okay. Where are we going now with this? Yeah. Okay, let's go. Excuse me. To the Telegraph. This story is taken directly from the Sky News interview yesterday. Protesters admit they could disrupt hospital emergency care. There was a couple of them on yesterday. They were called Sarah Lunnan and Savannah Lovelock. A couple of women. One of them was a middle-aged woman. The other one was a 20-year-old. Not scientists. And they went on to talk about the 2 weeks of planned disruption in London, which is going to cause a lot of problems, apparently. They avowed that this time it's going to be much, much worse than it was back in April. They want to bring the capital to a standstill because they are not being listened to and because politicians are not doing what they are told in making the country zero carbon neutral by 2025, which is impossible. Anyway, even if it was the right thing to do, it's absolutely impossible. When asked on Sky News whether they were worried about disruption at the hospital, Savannah Lovelock said they were really sorry, but we are running out of time. But then they backtracked and said they will stand by to allow ambulances to pass. How nice of them. Here's their planned route. Not their planned route. This is where they are going to be protesting. Okay? This might mean something to you. If you're in London, it might give you a bit of a heads up as to where to avoid. There is absolute consternation from businessmen and women in London this morning at the police, asking the police what are they planning to do about these people. And they're not getting any answers. The Met Police is not speaking to people. The Met Police is facilitating these protests and arresting a token few people, but facilitating these protests instead of taking measures to get these people off the streets, out of harm's way, and to allow then people to go on about their business as they would any other day. The police is facilitating it. In fact, it's getting a little bit more sinister than that, I would have argued, because the Telegraph also alleges that some former police officers are joining in with these people. And they use, I really am blind. They use this guy here. Is it Rob Cooper? I can't see. Rob Cooper, yeah, former police chief superintendent, supports Extinction Rebellion. And he retired a decade ago. And what the police are doing is they are discovering that some of their ex-members are, maybe because they have a lot of time on their hands, are joining groups like Extinction Rebellion. And the police are contacting the former members to say, look, you know that we're under-resourced anyway. You know that this is just crazy. So give us a hand here. And they're being told, we really do face a climate emergency. There are times, says Rob Cooper, when I really struggle. I have 3 children and I have a grandchild and I really struggle. Because again, the theme is there won't be any world for them. And maybe this guy believes that, maybe. This guy, gotta get used to it, this guy. Maybe he believes it. Maybe he's been seduced into believing that we're all going to be gone. I mean, when you look at this, what's very funny about this, I meant to say this yesterday on the radio show, but I so much to say about this protest and the Sky News interview that I forgot to say it, and it's really pissing me off because the current leader of this group, Extinction Rebellion, is a guy called Roger Hallam. He's the co-founder of it, and he's the current leader of it. And he wrote an article in the Sunday Times yesterday. And I meant to share this with you. And I didn't. And the reason I wanted to share it is because of the irony. You've got members of Extinction Rebellion going on television demanding that we make all these changes to our lives. And in the Sunday Times, you have Roger Hallam writing, and I'm going to quote this now, "We're all going to be dead soon, so there's nothing else to do. We're going to die anyway. Doesn't matter what we do." So the question begs to be asked then to the protesters, what are you doing it for? And for some of them, it's to avoid going to work. Others don't have any work. And for others again, it's to jolly up. We're all going to be dead soon, so there's nothing else to do, he said. And he also told the Sunday Times, wait for it, is that we, and as in we, that means you, me and everybody else, we must revert to a peasant orientation, which obviously has been completely lost in Western society. That's a direct quote. We must revert to a, quote, peasant orientation, which obviously has been completely lost in Western society. We've got to go back to the Stone Age, or we're going to die. And at the same time, you have Greta Thunberg saying this. If we don't live as we used to live pre-industrial revolution, we're all going to be dead in 12 years. And you have, and let me get this quote so I don't mess it up. You have this congresswoman in the US called Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And she's been saying over the weekend, the world is going to end in 12 years, not 11 or 13 years. 12 years. Oh, Jesus. You've got to read Dominic Lawson, in the Daily Mail today. dailymail.co.uk. His article is fantastic. He's taken the piss out of some of the politicians particularly. And he's lampooning Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. He says, she said the world's going to end in 12 years. Very specifically, not 11 or 13, if we don't address climate change. And he writes, and I've taken a paragraph. Dominic Lawson writes, Extinction Rebellion demonstrators are against all forms of motorised transport, indeed every modern form of travel. As even a reasonably supportive article in The New Internationalist explained, under the policies of Extinction Rebellion, energy would be strictly rationed, dedicated to survival. Expect massive disruption in the way food is grown, processed and distributed. There would be virtually no private car use, aviation, haulage or shipping. And Lawson goes on to say, we would be living in an eco-fascist dystopia. Yeah. Exactly. I wonder, does Dominic Lawson have any sympathy for some of the great writers of the last 25, 30, 35 years, men and women in the independent media who have foretold this tyranny. I wonder, does Lawson know about them? You know who I'm talking about. I could name them, 3 or 4 of them who've been writing about this for decades. This is where we're going. This bleak future, this kind of neo-fascist, you could call it dystopian future, these people want to bring in. I wonder in 20 years' time, because we're not going to be carbon neutral, and I wonder in 20 years' time, when obviously none of this has happened, where will Dominic or Donncha McCarthy, this idiot who's on BBC Radio all the time, this Irish guy, where will he be? Where will little Lord Poo Poo Pants be from Extinction Rebellion? Where will Greta Thunberg be? Will they be apologising to people unreservedly? Will they be apologising for the psychological damage inflicted on children who are going about their lives in genuine morbid fear that the world is going to come to an end? You know? When it isn't. It's bullshit, this. How many more? I can't find any new way to say it. This is absolute bullshit. It's not going to happen. In fact, in Lawson's article, he provides quotes from the IPCC, that's the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, where they themselves distanced themselves from Thunberg. Even the IPCC, which is the I suppose, it's climate change central. Right? They don't buy into this 12 years we're all dead nonsense if we don't do anything. It's dreadful. So it is, as I said, it's everywhere. And what do you do about it, you know? I wasn't advocating violence yesterday when I said it will eventually come to violence. I don't advocate it. I wouldn't participate in it. The reason I mention it is because I think those, you know, who pull the strings would love us to revert to and resort to violence to deal with this existential threat, because that's what it is. The irony is the existential threat to humanity isn't coming from Mother Nature. It's coming from these goons. These goons in a fascistic, tyrannical society where the police are enabling them to cause, if they get their own way, millions and millions and millions of pounds worth of economic damage. And I'm not even talking about the psychological damage they are inflicting on children, but the harassment and the inconvenience they are going to cause people in the next couple of weeks. It is against the law to take to the streets in this country. Not against the law to protest. It should never be against the law to protest against anything you feel needs to be protested. But it is against the law to block streets, roads and motorways, and to prevent people. It is a violation of their national, not just their human rights, but their national rights as a citizen, your citizens' rights, to be able to go from A to B, or from A to B to C, unencumbered. And I don't like violence, but I said it yesterday. The police should take whatever measures are necessary to get these people off the streets. They are terrorists. They are deranged, delinquent, psychotic terrorists. They are lunatics. Listen to the language they use. Look at them. Look at the pictures. Look at that nutcase there in the turquoise jumper or aquamarine or green or whatever colour it is. They are lunatics. I'm doing this for your child. Well, I'll take care of my child, thank you very much. You vacuous, empty-headed fucking goon who's incapable of thinking for yourself. You know? The police should deploy whatever means necessary to clear the streets of these nutcases. Okay, and if that means setting up emergency courts to process these people very quickly and to give repeated offenders increasingly longer prison sentences, then do it. Oh, you're right wing. I couldn't be any less right wing. You know, I'm not right wing, I'm not left wing, I'm not liberal. I'm autonomous. I derive my thinking. I arrive at my decision not because of any groupthink or because of any allegiance to any group. I sometimes say things and adopt positions that have been attributed to a conservative point of view. But the irony being, of course, being worried about the impact of mass migration on indigenous populations is not a historically conservative thing to worry about. It's a socialist thing to worry about, ironically. And many of the bedwetting narcissists on Twitter today who are members of Momentum and they demand open borders, and many of them know that it was socialist policy for years and years and years to push back against those types of immigration policies because of the effects they had on the working class people in the country, the working class people. So me sometimes talking about the damages done to people's living standards because of unfettered migration, it's not a conservative viewpoint. Never was historically. Unfettered immigration ultimately benefits conservatives and those with money, the upper 1% or 2% or 3%. So we don't fall into pigeonholes, some of us. We don't get boxed away as a conservative or as a... I love it when I get emails from people, including former guests. I don't know how to describe you, Richie. You say you're a socialist, but then I heard you talking about this transgender stuff. What, because I'm a socialist, I'm supposed to just be open to everything or agree with everything? You know? Every liberal nonsense. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, no, I don't. Don't agree with people telling people that they can use what toilets they want to use. I don't agree with people saying it's okay for children to agree to take puberty blockers when they're very young. I don't agree with the trans agenda saying that. Doesn't make me conservative, doesn't make me right wing. Just makes me, doesn't it? Anyway, I'm going to quickly run through a few stories. I'm running out of time here. And I spent too much time on that Extinction Rebellion stuff. Yeah. Good stuff. Let me read a few comments there. Somebody calling themselves Johnny Truth says Richie is a shill. No independent thought for you, so listen to this garbage oozing out of this shill, says Johnny Truth. These are the arseholes you get on YouTube from time to time. They hide behind pseudonyms like Johnny Truth because Johnny tells the truth, and they scream shill at content creators like me when they hear something they disagree with. They're utterly incapable of engaging with you on any level, so they just scream shill and then they run away hiding behind their pseudonyms. Muppets. Yeah. Ah, well, you have to love them, you know. You have to love them. Because I suppose everybody has a right to an opinion. Now, regardless of how ridiculous it is, we talk about snowflakery. For years, Graham Norton, the Irish comedian and presenter of his own talk show on BBC One on Friday evenings, has written a column for The Telegraph, an agony aunt column. An agony aunt column. Yeah, but he doesn't want to write it anymore because in recent times, the paper's commentary on issues like Brexit has made him nauseous. Oh dear. He also didn't like the Telegraph's coverage of Brett Kavanaugh and the hearings around Brett Kavanaugh, who was Trump's nominee, wasn't he, to the Supreme Court. And did he behave inappropriately around women? Brett Kavanaugh, and I don't know whether he did or whether he didn't. If he did, he's a lousy bastard, I have no idea. But Graham Norton felt, I could just no longer write for The Telegraph. Fair enough, it's a free world, right? But it's the thinking behind this that I don't like. But I agree, people are entitled to think as they want. If I get to be free of thought, why not Graham Norton? He says, peace defending Brett Kavanaugh and things President Trump said about Kavanaugh's accuser. I thought, this is toxic, and I love that job. I absolutely adore doing it, but ultimately I didn't love it enough to be part of that stable. I had to step away, which saddened me, but I was beginning to feel a bit nauseous. It's a weird thing. These very nice people would say, oh, I love your column in The Telegraph, and I'm looking at them thinking, you read The Telegraph? That's not good. That's not a happy situation to be in. What kind of fuckery are you? Does Graham Norton really believe that he could possibly be tainted as a comedian and actor and television presenter who writes an agony aunt column responding to people's problems? Does he really believe that we are in a world where his own standing, his own personal standing with society, with the public, could be damaged or tarnished in some way because his column appears in the Telegraph? This is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's dangerous. It's toxic. It's oh Christ. It's anti-intellectual, this, on so many levels, isn't it? They must have about 100 contributors to Telegraph. Many of their columnists write articles that are scathingly critical of points made by an article that you read the day before in the Telegraph. Yes, the paper's editorial line is right of centre, fair enough, but it is full of articles by people who don't have a right of centre viewpoint. This is wretched, isn't it? And this is it's a personal one for me, obviously, because, I've had experience of this. People being told you can't go on the Richie Allen show because he interviewed other people who have, said things that we find to be unacceptable. I get emails from people from time to time saying, I can't come on your show. And I don't embarrass these people by naming them because they're nice. They're nice people. Richie, thanks for the invitation, but I won't, mate. Because it's not going to be good for me. I'm going to be getting it. And I know. So I say, fair enough. I'll get it in the neck, Richie, because you interviewed that guy that time. You interviewed that guy, that KKK guy. Or you interviewed that Alison Chablo. I can't go on with you, Richie. It's ridiculous. It's preposterous. I've even said to some of these people, listen, I'm actually inviting you on to talk about weather manipulation, or maybe not. Maybe I'm bringing you on to talk about Brexit or whatever. Why don't you, after we've spoken about Brexit, why don't you have a go at me for interviewing Alison Chablo? How about that? I've done that. I've said to them, yeah, go on, let's stir it up a bit. That covers you then. Hey, Richie, thanks for having me on about Brexit. What are you having these people on for? And you know what? The prospective interviewee will say, well, Richie, I don't have a problem with you interviewing Alison Chablo. Well, come on the programme then. I can't because I'll be getting it in the neck. It's tyranny, folks. It's fascism. And Graham Norton might mean well. He might do. But this is ridiculous. Oh, I can't write anymore. I can't be part of that stable. What, all of them? The guy who wrote the thing about Kavanaugh is an American based in DC who's a Republican. What else would he say? But the Telegraph also had articles, and I know they did. They also featured writers who were and are critical of Trump and some of the things that Trump says around these issues. So Norton should just say, well, yeah, it's a broad church. These are scary. I know I say it all the time. Scary times. Where are the editorials lampooning and mocking and ridiculing Norton? You snowflake fucking idiot. Write your agony aunt column. None of your fucking business what goes on in the political segment or the news segment. Crazy stuff this. Crazy. Crazy. Here's an interesting one. This will trigger some of you before I go. And I've got loads to do. I've got a message to do. That's a great Irish thing. I've got a message to do. Got a message. Remember that, Irish people? Your mother would always say, I've got some messages to do. Messages. Fiona Ryan was on the Irish television programme The Late Late Show, which airs on Friday night. It's presented now by a guy called Ryan Tubridy. I can't watch it. I do have access to it, but I can't watch Tubridy. He's pretty poor now. Anyway, he might say the same about me. But Lidl ran an ad about saving money, and they featured a mixed race couple in the ad. And certain commentators in Ireland, in the independent media, including a former guest on our show, Gemma O'Doherty, on the radio show, took exception to the ad run by Lidl and ran Twitter messages about the great replacement and stuff like that. And this woman went on The Late Late Show to say that they've been forced to leave Ireland and come to Britain because of the negative reaction to the ad, which was run by Lidl, which you can see there, just about see the ad there. So I'm conflicted on this one, me. I'll tell you why. You know I've never been a fence sitter, Jesus Christ. Far from it, right? Membership of the European Union and a common policy on migration and freedom of movement has been terrible for countries. It really has. We know it has. It has put unbelievable pressure on public services in countries. But it's also been really bad for people who traditionally depended on unskilled work. Okay? Now, if I didn't have a big mouth on me, and if I wasn't comfortable using a microphone, and if I didn't have my apprenticeship in radio, which I did many, many moons ago, I would be doing unskilled work, really. Because my third level qualifications are not worth a damn. They're not. I would need to be doing unskilled work. I would have to be looking for factory work or whatever. There's very little of it around anyway. But what was around, it became very competitive. That labour market, that jobs market, because of unskilled migration. And you and I maybe agree on this being a plan going back to the Treaty of Rome, to the architects of the European Union. The European Union was never designed to prevent war in Europe ever happening again. The European Union was a power grab by the biggest banks and corporations in the world to centralise power so they didn't have to go to individual sovereign countries to get around the laws, so that they could operate in individual countries without having to circumvent those countries' national laws. It's as simple as that. I've explained it a million times, but that's how easy it is to understand. And it's been terrible for people. It has certainly led to great changes in cities and in communities in Ireland in terms of the demographics of those cities and communities. No doubt about that. This woman went on the Late Late Show and she said, look, we've had to leave. And they're blaming Gemma O'Doherty for this almost exclusively, which might not be entirely fair, maybe. That being said, I'm conflicted on this one. So her fiancé is a guy called Jonathan Mathis. They're from Meath, County Meath. And they appeared in Lidl ads, and they appeared in the ads with their 22-month-old son. And there are people who believe that this is kind of predictive programming, that it is promoting migration and promoting mixed race relationships and marriages. Now, I've got no problems with mixed race relationships. Why could anybody have any problem with them? I have a cousin called Anne, my mother's first cousin, my second cousin, a lovely lady from Waterford, and she married Harvey, a businessman from London. She married Harvey back in the mid-90s. Harvey's a black lad, sound as a pound. And I DJ'd at the wedding. I DJ'd at the wedding. And it was interesting. It wasn't a very common thing. It's very unusual, to be marrying somebody from a different country, number one, right? But a different race. And so people believe that these ads are promoting it. And that these ads are promoting a new type of Irishness. Multiculturalism. And there's a lot of screaming and bawling about this. And this woman has said it's gotten so bad that we have had to leave the country. There they are. They said that some members of the public wanted Lidl to be boycotted for using them in the ad. I mean, they're an attractive young couple, aren't they? I suppose you could say. She's from Ireland. She moved to London. She met the chap in London. They came back to Ireland. I suppose companies are constantly being pressurised by external forces to reflect some sort of diversity. So maybe it's not coming from Lidl. Lidl is getting lambasted from all quarters of the independent media. But maybe companies are coming under increasing pressure to use ethnic minority models in their marketing and all this. Maybe they are. I think they probably are, to be honest. Right? Let's see. So Gemma O'Doherty's getting blamed. One of the most prominent provocateurs was former journalist Gemma O'Doherty. Gemma O'Doherty isn't a former journalist. That's a bit cheeky. She's a journalist. You don't just become a former one. Right? And she's done some brilliant work, Gemma, over the years on scandals around the Irish police, the Gardaí, and other scandals, and missing children. I happen to think she's an excellent writer, personally. But she's gone down a road, Gemma, that I don't like very much. I think she's got thick enough skin. A, that she probably couldn't give a shit that I'm going to be critical of her now. And B, as a free speech advocate, she's well able to take it. But I think... So her tweet was, German dump Little Ireland, gaslighting the Irish people with their multicultural version of the rhymes, kidding no one, resist the great replacement wherever you can by giving this kip a wide berth. It's a strong opinion. Obviously. But I would say she's entitled to express it, I would say. But I worry about people like Gemma O'Doherty. I don't worry for her or about her. I think she's doing okay. But not this tweet specifically, but I think Gemma has had a look at people like Katie Hopkins and Milo. Is it Giannopoulos? Is that his name? And Paul Joseph Watson and others. And Laura Southern, Lauren or Laura. And I think Gemma has thought in the last couple of years, I like that. I'll have some of that. Because it's a niche new market for socio-economic political commentators. There's a lot of money in it. I've said this on the show before. Now, I'm not accusing Gemma of this. I'm speculating. Because what you're getting from the likes of Gemma these days is nothing more than race baiting, which has been around forever. It's not new, race baiting. And drumming up a lot of enthusiastic support for that race baiting, and then turning that support into an income stream. Okay? So park your outrage to one side for a minute, because I know some of you won't be happy to hear this, but you can't be surprised. I have said it before about alternative right commentators. I've said it before about others. Open door migration does nobody any good. It doesn't. It causes severe problems with public services, but also, as I've alluded to many times, it props up and leads to increasingly the success of the divide and conquer strategy. Because the people who are responsible for these policies are not the target, exclusively the target of the ire of the far right or alt-right commentator. They're not. Often the immigrants themselves, or the mixed race people themselves, or the minority ethnic person themselves, are often getting the brunt of it in the videos and Facebook messages and posts by the alt-right celebrity commentators. And the alt-right celebrity commentators know better. They know why 1 million people ended up in Germany. They know why Southern Europe has had a problem in terms of the economic impact of migration. They know this. But they often don't do nearly enough to distinguish between the problem itself and those who cause the problem. And they deliberately don't distinguish because they've got a baying group of supporters who want to blame the immigrants, who want to hear more and more and more stories about grooming gangs, who want to hear more and more and more stories about how a minority ethnic person is getting some advantage economically over the indigenous person. The Twitter follower, Facebook follower, or the YouTube follower of the alt-right person just wants to hear, yeah, give me more stories about how this black dude or how this Pakistani dude was given a place at university. Give us more stories about how the police didn't investigate grooming. That's what we want to hear. And increasingly, people like Gemma serve it up to them with chips and coleslaw on the side because there's plenty of money in it. I used to talk to David Icke about this years ago. We used to laugh about this, and I would say, you know, with our skills, David, with our obvious skills to create content, we could just go full swing to the far right and do it a lot better than some of these people and make ourselves very wealthy. That's a fact. Not now, obviously. But yeah, easily. And that would be my criticism of Gemma, who I think has been a brilliant journalist, is you kind of sold out there, love. You've seen there's a niche market there. You've seen the success of people like Hopkins and others on the right, and you've thought, yeah, I'll have some of that. Because I'm articulate, attractive, you know, intelligent. I can feed it back. And I can do little campaigns like this, which get thousands and thousands of retweets and likes because people love it. But it's really not saying anything. And it's not speaking to the real agenda. And ultimately, who and what is behind that real agenda. It's a blame game. It's race baiting. It's a blame game. Blame, 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 blame. Yeah, sometimes they'll throw Soros's name into the mix. But then they'll run for the hills when they are reminded that Soros is Jewish. And by the way, the idea that George Soros is exclusively behind all of this, or he's the architect of it, is ridiculous. He's not. Soros is a pawn in a much bigger game. He's not responsible or even remotely exclusively responsible for it. But when people like Gemma and others, when they get reminded, oh, that sounds a little bit anti-Semitic now, they go running for the hills. In any case. So I'm very interested in this and where all of this is going. You know, I think you understand what I'm saying. It's race baiting. You see it on Twitter. Look at their accounts. They regularly troll Twitter looking for stories in the tabloids. Stories that are crime stories where the protagonist or the offender is a migrant. It's what they do. They go online, oh, there's a story in the Mail about a rape from a migrant. Stick it on Twitter and go, there's multiculturalism for you. That's race baiting. That is race baiting in the extreme. It's not intellectual. in any way, shape or form. Right? Because the raging mob who love all that shit. You know, the underlying idea is, well, migrants are subhuman or racists or rapists. Well, no, it's a little bit more complicated than that. There's something going on that's far, far deeper. But there's no money in that. I can tell you that for a fact. There's no money in saying, no, on the far left, you're a bunch of loonies. On the far right, you're a bunch of loonies. And some of you are very clever and you do what you do to make money. The truth is not somewhere in the middle. The truth is somewhere way out there as to what's going on and why. And the tiny, tiny, tiny minority of independent media that want to find out what's going on and why, there's no money in that. Ever. Do you wish, Richie, that you'd gone for the money? Well, of course, that's a joke. No. When I used to discuss this with Ike, we used to laugh and say, yeah, if you want to fast track to riches, if you're articulate, if you're a good journalist and you know what you're doing, feed the mob what the mob wants to read. And it's not just a Gemma issue. You've got the counter, you've got the other side of it, and all those goons like the Canary over here, the Liberals, same thing. Tell the mob what it wants to hear. Ching, 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 ching. But it's very sad when many of these people know that it's dishonest, is what I would argue. So there you are now. But good luck to Gemma. As I said, she's done some very good work in the past. Very good writing. But this is not something I've got any interest in. I've not invited Gemma back on the show for ages. It's not a slight to Gemma. In any way, shape or form, I'm not interested in it. I've had this argument out with other people, including Lana at Red Ice Radio and others. I'm not going to have this argument repeatedly with people. So there you are. Take it or leave it. Right, gotta go. Let me just remind you before I go anywhere. I hope I triggered the bejesus out of some of you there, by the way. On a Monday morning. Have I? What have I done here? I wanted to give props, people. I wanted to give props to Dr. Robin Kelly, yeah. Dr. Robin Kelly's a fascinating man. He's in New Zealand. And he's going to be on the radio programme later on with me today. It'll be 6 o'clock in the morning in Auckland, where he's based. But I found Robin through Richard Willett, Extreme Hypnosis, Extreme Danger. And he's a really fascinating guy. He's a GP, practicing GP in New Zealand. We're going to talk about 5G and other things on the show today. I do hope to have another guest as well. But it's going to be an interesting Richie Allen show today. So in the meantime then, look after yourselves today. Have a good Monday. It's miserable out there. I've got to go and do some messages now. And then get ready for the radio show today, which will be at 5 UK time. Until then, bye now. She'll never forgive us. I can't close out the show today. What am I doing, eh? What in the name of God? What in the name of Jesus am I doing? This is bad stuff, isn't it? Let me try it again. So I can wipe the screen there. Lovely. Okay then. Bye. See you tomorrow.